Good morning. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Matthew Newman. I'm a global chief correspondent at MLEX. So we're one of the media sponsors here. Welcome, everyone. We've started out on day 2 with some very interesting discussions about 5G. And now we're going to move on to talk about the definition of 5G. The panel we have before us is made up of experts. So I'm going to start out by introducing everyone, then I will move on to a short introduction, then we'll have some presentations by the panel, and then we're going to launch the debate, and then finally we'll have a chance to get some of your questions. So we look forward to an interactive part of the session towards the end. So just to introduce the panel here, we have Julia, and this is on my direct left here. Julia Immaculada Picado Casada. She's Vice Chair, RSPG, and Secretary of State for Telecommunications and Digital Infrastructures in Spain. Right next to her is Tassos Virazatas. He's Head of Spectrum Directorate and the Hellenic Telecommunications and Post Commission in Greece. Let's see, is Javier next to? No, yes, he is. Javier, he is Strategy Director at Hispasat. Then we have, I think Rafael is next to him, Senior Vice President at MedUX. And then finally we have at the far end, Stephen Pentland. He's Head of Markets and Network Policy at Vodafone. So just to kick things off, I'm going to give a brief introduction to the subject, and then we'll have a time for the presentations. With I think some of you have slides, so we'll have those up as well. So the European Union has set digital decade targets with measurable goals in 4 areas: connectivity, digital skills, digital business, and digital public services. Digital infrastructure is the foundation that will support these goals. The EU has set ambitious targets covering all European households with a gigabit connection and all populated areas with 5G by 2030. So I think everyone in this room knows these goals, but are we meeting these goals? So I think the Commission has been very clear that we aren't. By mid-2023, around 89% of the EU's population was covered by basic 5G. We'll go into more about the definition of what basic is in a bit. And this is according to the Commission's 5G Observatory. And then just last year, we had a white paper from the Commission, and it said that the prospects of deploying 5G standalone networks, again, we'll talk more about what that means, standalone, which ensure high reliability and low latency and are crucial for enabling advanced features, are not good. So the prospects of standalone rolling out are not good. The deployment of such networks can be estimated at significantly less than 20% of the populated areas in the EU. The key connectivity goals were set as part of the strategy, and what we have is lacks a significant we're not meeting those goals, and that was made clear by the new digital chief, Hanna Virkkunen, during her hearing at the European Parliament last year. These KPI indicators for 5G don't actually consider quality of service. As a result, most of the current 5G deployment is considered basic 5G, and meanwhile, 5G coverage in the 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz band, which is considered the primary pioneer band for 5G in the EU, and is only available mid-band on a large scale, offering a good balance between coverage and capacity, stands at only 51% in 2023. So the Commission has said there's a need to clarify the definition of 5G coverage and its relationship to quality of service to provide clearer policy goals and ensure that the 5G economic and societal benefits are delivered. That's what we're here to talk about. In this context, we'll look at how 5G should be defined and the level of coverage, speed, and service we should seek to achieve. We'll also go into the different strategies and technologies that provide options to deliver 5G connectivity and different scenarios and regions where the balance lies to ensure both societal and economic benefits of 5G are met. So as just painting the picture of where we are, I'm going to start out with Julia, if you want to give your brief overview of where we stand. Perhaps you can, I don't know if you want to just sit there. You don't need to come up to the podium if you want to just.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to tell you is that when I started to prepare this session, I was thinking about the first RSPG opinion on the roadmap for the 5G in terms of a spectrum. When approaching that moment, it was clearly settled the need of low bands for coverage, mid bands for capacity, and higher bands for innovation and new applications. It's true that the higher band is not yet delivering what it was expected, but we can say that the 700 MHz band and the 3.5 GHz band are currently the core of the network, of the 5G network. And also that this model was replicated further globally. Also, it is needed to say that the EU goals need to be ambitious because there is a need to deliver 5G coverage and quality of service to every citizen and every business, and different scenarios like transport corridors, industrial areas, etc. So taking all this into account, there is a need to think that we need to approach the way to deploy 5G gradually. It's not possible to have all the advantages at once at the first minute. And we all know that the 5G technology is a paradigm shift with new specific characteristics which could be used in different scenarios. So the way to measure this implementation cannot be the same as coverage, but coverage is still needed. In any case, I think there is no doubt that we need clarifying the definition of the 5G in relation to EU goals and setting the stage for a balanced approach which make this deployment economically viable. So, what we need then it is to cover the main needs that we have. Aim on then, as you see, the universal connectivity, the adequate speeds, a reliable service, and to balance all these needs with the economic balance. So one of the way to achieve this and to avoid discrepancies, aim on the different achievements in all regions, is to develop a common definition for 5G that aligns these performances and takes into account the societal and economical goals. Talking again about the different scenarios, we know that needs are different for instance, for these scenarios on the screen, transport corridors, rural areas, industrial zones. So as we have different needs, so we need to balance how to define 5G taking this also into account. And we know there are successive releases of 5G implementing these new characteristics, integrating, for instance, now satellite non-terrestrial networks. So we need to understand also that the coverage of this technology is needed because other technologies will shut down, as we know. So we need to give citizens and society the new technology that will last in time. And to implement these releases and to promote the implementation of the 5G standalone to give the benefits of the real implementation of 5G. As time is running, just to highlight again that I think it is a good approach to use the low bands for coverage and the mid bands to give other capacities. So a mixed approach balancing these needs and taking into account the economic sustainability, it is what it is needed. In relation to try to have 5G everywhere, it's totally known by all of us that it's totally economically not viable. And with the latest advancements in satellite networks, it seems sensible to adopt these non-terrestrial networks to complement or to be also integrated in this 5G total coverage and provision of services with the needed quality. So basically a pragmatic approach in order to achieve 5G deployment and also in order to have or to prepare a good 5G definition that can make comparable what are the achievements of 5G in Europe in order to also have the basis where we can take the information to improve our deployments and to better identify the needs where we should start to introduce new measures, for instance, in rural areas, mutualization of a spectrum, or I don't know, sometimes also there is a need of public state debts, different mechanisms. That is my conclusion. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That really sets the scene and touched on a lot of the topics that we're going to dive into a little bit deeper. Tassos, you're next. If you can tell us a little bit more about the situation in Greece. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Forum Europe for inviting me to a very interesting conference again. Well, let's go a little bit back. I was very happy even today to listen to how the first 5G opinion was a game changer. It was well received by many stakeholders. I was co-chairing the RSPG group back then, and I really like to hear good words about my, let's say, spiritual children. On the other hand, I have to say that I'm a bit disappointed when we saw the need to redefine 5G, reinvent maybe 5G, because after 4 years from the time that the auction should have taken place, I also believe that we should have progressed more than we have now. We followed the first opinion from 2016 with another 2 or 3 up to opinions in the RSPG up to 2020, where most of the auctions have either completed or were taking place. But yeah, I agree. We are now having, how do we call it, basic 5G, complemented by 4G, giving some good services, but not all the innovations and futuristic elements that 5G was promising. So yeah, we need to do something. Just a brief introduction about where we are in Greece. When we started thinking about 5G, following these opinions and the decisions from Europe, our main goal was to be on time for clearing spectrum, refarming where needed. Big example, the digital television that in the south is very prominent and using a lot of frequencies. We did that. In 2020, we completed the auctions in all three 5G bands. Also, we re-auctioned the 2.1 GHz band that was expiring, 3G licenses that were expiring. So even by January 21st, the small, nice logo of 5G was appearing in our terminal. So mission accomplished, and we were really happy. I mean, Greece is sometimes late adopting and implementing European decisions, but we were really, really happy. Now, 4 years later, the operators report good 5G coverage, whatever that means, and also quite good speeds, high speeds in urban areas and populated big cities, also in main roads. We will be doing some measurements to actually verify all those reports. I hope they will agree with the operator's report. But as everyone reports, no massive communications yet, no reliable low latency connections, and they are now starting to implement 5G. By now, I mean in 2024, they have started implementing 5G standalone. So what should we expect? The 6G discussions are well underway, and we are another 6 years till the official launch in 2030. So it's a good opportunity to actually think about it and really define what we expect for the next years. For me, it's a good opportunity because there are some licenses that are expiring in the next years, namely in Greece, namely the 900 megahertz band and the 1800 megahertz band. So it's a good thing that when re-auctioning or renewing those bands, we will rethink of what we would like to, or from our operators to deliver to Greek people. Thank you very much.
Excellent, and thank you for keeping to the time. Moving on, let's have some views from Javier.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here. And Julia has just helping me to introduce why a satellite operator is here, because could be something strange. But the real thing and the real fact is that satellites has been always working for providing the coverage on those areas that other transmission media is not possible or is not economically viable. So let me first start with Hispasat. Hispasat is a company that has more than 30 years. We are a satellite operator and a service provider from several years. We have more than 13 satellites covering Europe and Latin America mainly. We are the third operator in LATAM and the fourth in Europe. We have just presence in many countries, present in 11 countries and providing service in more than 20. And we have just been, from a long time ago, focused in what we call the digital divide and helping telco companies to reach those areas. So we initially started with the video. You know, that was the first use for the satellite to take the video to those places that were not able. From some time ago, we are just in the broadband digital divide. In Spain, we have the program UNICO that is just providing 100 megabits to any place in Spain. And we, mainly in Latin America, but also in Europe, we are helping also the telco for the backhaul. In Mexico, we have more than 3,000 sites where we are providing this extension of coverage. But what we want to bring here is what also Julia said about I'm just putting everything because it's better. We are actively working in the next evolution for satellite. I mean, that we have just realized that satellite has to be something that is fully integrated with the other transmission. I mean, could not be difficult and could not be something that is just really an extension, natural extension of the terrestrial. So we are just actively working in 5G and TNT. The next generation of satellite must come with this 5G. So that means that part of the G node will be on the satellite, the core will be there, so we will be something easy that the telco operator will use the satellite as an extension of the terrestrial network without taking some complexity out and providing new abilities to deploy the 5G, not only for the coverage of the cities, also for providing for the industrial, providing for this kind of bubbles that could be created easily, taking this into account. So we are participating actively in the 3GPP. We know, you know that from year 2022, it was the first standard created for that. And one important thing is that the constellation that has been just announced by the European Commission is by default, and it's going to be by default 5G. Because we are going to take some time to have it in place. Even someone was telling me, will not be 5G, will be 6G at the time that is appearing, but it's going to be initially in that concept. And the Commission is putting a lot of stress that this constellation must come with that because it's the way to provide this kind of coverage as universal coverage. So for us, and we are just, we are providing, for example, we did in Spain the first 5G NT transmission that was just really fine. We are working now even providing this kind of services, not only for trains and other kind of more, I mean, not only train, automotive, all these kind of things we are thinking about. So again, and I'm going to be, we are not doing any kind of competence with other transmission media. We are complementary to those, and we are the one, we think that we are the one that we can provide this kind of objective for universalization as a way to follow, in the sense that, again, we are cheaper, and we are, everybody is listening now, the direct to device that is also coming, and it's something with the satellite, so we'll be part of all the environment that we need to manage and we need to put together in order to have this. So it's not another, it's, for us, it's just, again, helping to reach the goals that we have just put in place in Europe and in the other countries. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I really like the that last slide because maybe this was on purpose or maybe not, but the 5G NTN is going to contribute to bride, not bridge. So it's going to be the bride, as in we're expecting a wedding soon. So moving on to the next speaker, we have Rafael Gonzalez from MedUX. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Rafael, as Matt was saying, and representing MedUX, the Internet Quality of Experience Testing and Monitoring company. So basically by analyzing millions of data points, so we help regulators, governments, and operators to build resilient infrastructure and also tackle other challenges, such as the digital divide. Today, I will try to share some of the insights that we have collected through our 5G benchmarking campaigns and also on the field experience across Europe I don't want to be the party pooper today. William tried it very hardly before, but there is a hard reality that we need to face as Europeans. Okay, that's very important. There is a world beyond coverage. There is a world beyond average and peak speeds. If we really need or want to have those ambitious objectives of the digital decade and make sure that there is a satisfactory end user experience. Okay, so let's start by setting the stage. Of course, you all need to know about the digital decade, and if not, you are too late in the game. Even if we see 2030 here in the slides, there is a very important remark to be done. So we are in 2025, and there was a former objective to provide universal 5G coverage in urban cities and the 5G corridors. And we are far from that, I have to say. Of course, we need to provide future-proof technologies. That's very important, and we need to face the realities of today's ecosystem, as I said before. Those realities are very well related to what Tassos mentioned. What we see in Europe and most of the deployment is basic 5G. It still heavily relies on dynamic spectrum sharing, low band, and standalone. Probably you have not seen it yet in most of the countries where you live. We are really lagging behind, basically. Mid-band deployments, as Matt mentioned, are reaching just 51%, which is a little bit worrying if we really want to exploit the full potential of 5G capabilities, and we really want to transform the 5G connectivity, our society, and enable economic growth. So that gap between basic and advanced 5G is basically what is stopping us from really making a step forward. So to help evaluate these challenges, so what we are constantly doing is conduct drive testing campaigns all over Europe. You can see some of the numbers of previous campaign that was released in Mobile World Congress 24. It included more than 10 cities, over 40 million inhabitants, more than 4,000 kilometers driven by our team members. Spoiler alert, very soon, and in Mobile World Congress 25. So we have basically extended our campaign to Sweden, to Denmark, to Norway, Belgium, and Poland. So new insights also brought to the table by Medux. So you can see very nice numbers, and the achievements in terms of speed, of reliability, and coverage are quite significant from Lisbon, from Porto, from Paris, from Milan, and many other cities in general. But the reality is that coverage alone, speed alone, or reliability alone are not enough to satisfactory end user experiences. The reality is what we see is that the worst sessions, the 10% of worst sessions in some of the cities are even below 10 megabits per second. It is not the average experience what matters. It's your worst experiences that remain in your brain. That's what leads to complaints, bad experiences when streaming, when video conferencing, when web browsing, etc. When trying to access your daily lives, typical services. So basically, we will be unveiling soon those new details, some reports coming soon in February, March. But having said that, so let's focus on transforming connectivity and talking about 5G. From our perspective, there are four main pillars that we should take into consideration, and I will be glad to discuss with the panel today. First, we must and we have to look ahead and look beyond coverage and focus also on quality and reliability. Second, I think it's very important to really understand or ensure that the right 5G flavor, so the golden or $1 million discussion, what kind of 5G do we want to ensure for Europeans as a leading society in this world? Third, depending on what bold decisions we make, we need to make sure or mitigate at least that we are not creating a two-speed Europe or that we are leaving someone behind, as Javier was mentioning before, because we could create like a two-speed 5G Europe at some point within countries, but also within different regions. And last but not least, we really believe that we need to catch up with technology leaders in North America, APAC, as we have been seeing continuously. So This is everything as an introduction, so pleasure to be here today. So together we can, so let's transform 5G connectivity for good. It's time to act now. Thank you.
Wow, excellent call for action. And our last speaker, introductory comments will come from Stephen Pentland from Vodafone. Thank you.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Great. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to join the panel and step in for my colleague, Ben. I think we're all here because we believe that mobile connectivity is not just interesting or useful. Actually, it's transformative. Whether that's 3G, 4G, 5G, they've all played a role over the years in transforming not just us and our experience, but a lot of other industries. One very simple example is the music industry. See how it went from physical music sales to airplay to royalties to now a world where our young people, at least, are always listening to music. It's always on demand. They've got playlists. And why is that interesting? Because connectivity enabled it. But also the industry behind that, that's reliant on those royalties, now has a new renovated business case that has more predictability and longevity on those revenue streams. Some of your pension money may be invested in these companies who now hold these royalty rights, and it's digital that has enabled some of those businesses to be transformed. That's a very simple example, but imagine that replicated across all different industries. It's also clear that 5G is not a homogeneous technology. It's a Swiss Army knife with a number of different tools and blades. It can be applied to deliver connectivity in a whole range of environments. We're only scratching the surface on where we see 5G today, but imagine its ability to transform healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, and so far. The other thing that we've learned about technology, and I always love William's research on this, timing of technology take-up is always very uncertain. And think about, for example, the take-up of electric vehicles. In the UK, there was legislation requiring manufacturers to sell a certain proportion of their sales as EVs. And actually, manufacturing came to a halt because take-up for EVs had an initial boost, then it plateaued. There was nothing that could be done to, in the short term, re-accelerate the sales of EVs to the point where manufacturers, by virtue of that ratio rule, had to stop manufacturing regular cars. So predicting the take-up can be very problematic. So the next question is, with 5G, can we get to critical mass? Or have we got to critical mass? As we know, for all take-up of new technologies, getting critical mass is essential. I don't know about all of the European markets, but in the UK, digital radio really failed to make it. DAB, we used to call it dead and buried. Analog FM still rules in terms of broadcast radio consumption in the UK, at least. DAB in the UK never reached critical mass. Compare that to digital TV, where we had digital ready TV sets for a long time. We had the broadcasters ready to make the move. We had early transmissions, and we did manage to make that transition to critical mass. We moved that point. I think we can say here today that in 5G, we have crossed that critical mass point. The question is, what comes next? So far, we've got to a point where we've got, I think, pretty good coverage, but still a gap to close, and questions around quality. That has come so far through license commitments. So we've seen in auctions, licenses with commitments to build certain coverage commitments. And that's a great way of putting operators' money into investment rather than into treasury and higher license fees. We've also seen, as we've said earlier in the day, 5G deployment, because simply in a world of declining revenues and increasing traffic volumes, we need heavy lifting technology. 5G can deliver higher volumes at lower unit cost, and that helps to ameliorate the economics of serving this growing market. So investing in 5G so far, both through the licensing commitments and the capacity uplift and cost improvements it gives, so far has been a no regrets decision, I would say. Question is, what comes next? And I would pose it as a question of evolution versus intelligent design. Do we want to sit back and wait and see if evolution of the market and the networks happens? Or do we want to take an intelligent design approach and anticipate what we think is coming, even though we don't know exactly when, and put in place the building blocks to make sure that we capitalize on this. As the gentleman said earlier, the chicken and the egg is essential to this problem. And why is it that we should consider this bet? First of all, other industries do it. We take large bets on things like energy generation, transport, security, manufacturing. But here's the point. The risks are not symmetric. The risks are asymmetric. The risks of undershooting and being left behind in a 5G revolution are so much more damaging than the benefits of overshooting and maybe building too soon. So it's that asymmetry in a global competitive digital environment that creates the imperative for us in Europe to make sure that we don't take a risk of being left behind. Now, operators are totally supportive of the Commission's ambitions to grow those objectives. We've got a discussion both on how we define 5G with more clarity and embrace some of those extra elements of the Swiss Army knife that need to come into play, as well as work going on at the Commission on how to measure more accurately and more consistently across member states. How are we doing in terms of coverage? The question then is, where is that funding going to come from? Now, we're not first in the queue to say, let's have the state finance this, or let's have subsidies. This should be a positive commercial enterprise for the private sector. But we need two things. We need access to capital, to cash, and actually today's investments are pretty much free cash funded. If you look at the big operators in Europe, they're not going to the markets to borrow extra money. They're not doing share issues. They are principally buying this, making this investment from the free cash that's available from their existing businesses. And we saw from Morris yesterday the whole question about capital intensity and so on. The second question is whether even if we had the cash to make those investments, those returns would be viable from a return on capital employed perspective. And again, from Morris at Barclays yesterday, I think we had a very informed presentation around the limitations when ROCE falls below the cost of capital for the European industry. So there's just a few thoughts on what we need to do. The answer, I think, will be policy reform, but we can come on to that in a minute or two.
Excellent. It's the first time I've heard of Rocky. But I think the whole idea of a challenge facing Europe on investment is a major theme that will be confronting operators this year as the European Commission thinks about its next steps in reforming the telecom rules. So we'll have that as something in the back of our minds as we talk about 5G and clarity of definition. Thank you very much to the panel for laying out a very broad overview of the problem. I was fascinated to see how Portugal is got these incredible figures for connectivity. Porto and Lisbon. That's really amazing to think that countries that many people would not think on the leading edge of connectivity are actually right up there and actually on top of maybe even places where we're sitting right now in Belgium. So to launch the discussion, we're going to dig into the idea about targets and definitions in the digital decade. And so I would like to ask the panel, and perhaps we can start with Julia, about the question of what do we need to focus on? And one of the things I've picked up in the panel so far is, should we focus on quality and reliability as the key metrics? And if so, how can that definition be used to deliver the targets that the European Commission has set for us?
So if I understood you well, you were asking in what we should focus?
Yeah. So in other words, we have these very ambitious targets for 2030. The definition has been for debate. And then there's a question about quality of service and reliability, and how much could those targets, how much of those should be part of the 5G definition?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a difficult question because, as we have seen, perhaps it's not about defining 5G, but about defining what are our real needs and what we should measure that can be that can be the enough information to perceive if we are diverging in directions. So I would rather talk about focus on our real needs and to ground the infrastructure to achieve those needs. That could be with 5G or with other technologies, but the thing is that we need to have reliable services, we need high throughput in specific scenarios, we need high speed. So we need to define our needs and to define how to achieve those needs. And perhaps one size does not, perhaps not, I am sure that there is no one size that fits for all. So variety.
Okay, excellent. Excuse me. I think what would be interesting now is to hear about what's not in the definition right now, and it's the role of non-terrestrial networks, NTN, as it was described on the slide. So maybe we can hear a little bit more about that and other emerging technologies and what kind of role they can play in the mix. Javier, I think you're well placed to answer that question.
Yeah, in regard with the technology and how it can help, I think that we need to do this kind of holistic approach. I mean, I agree with Julia that we need to define also the kind of needs. It's true that we want to have the same kind of coverage, the same kind of service in any place. I think that we are approaching, if we forget about if we don't focus on technology and focus really on the needs, I think that we are just approaching to the point that we have the technology available to provide this kind of service independently of the way that they are just providing. So again, for me, satellite in the different version, I mean, I'm not talking only GEO, I'm talking constellation, I'm talking even, we know this direct to device, could come a possible solution in a way of evolution, in the same way that I was talking before, in the moment that the Spanish government launched this UNICO program that is providing 100 megabits in any place in Spain, was some kind of, not a unique, it's a program only for satellite. It was also some kind of combination to provide other UNICO program for fiber, for 5G. So making some evolutive idea to being able to provide all these kind of things. So for me, this that we need to do is this kind of combining this kind of thing. I mean, fix or really concrete the needs in each of this, and let the operator and other thing to help with the technology that is available. So I think that most of the telco company now is just starting to think in a more broad sense, using everything that is in place.
Okay. One of the things that fascinates me about this discussion is what are we trying to really achieve? And the idea is ubiquity of coverage. So is that really the ultimate goal of all this? Should absolutely every single household in Europe have 5G, high-speed 5G, or is there some sort of middle ground where you might have lower speeds available, but also that would maximize the societal goals? And we had in the first panel, we had the very interesting kind of slides on that, just from the people in this room. But I would love to hear your views. Maybe we could start with Rafael. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, This is a very interesting discussion, especially for policymakers, what we want to achieve with this. It's not only for operators, satellite operators or mobile operators, because they are businesses. So they will get up to the point where it is profitable, okay? So this is basic economics. As an engineer, I would say everything is possible and 5G can be everywhere. As an economist, I would rather say it makes no sense at all, unless there are the proper incentives to do so. There are several pillars that are very relevant to reach that ubiquity, and we can all agree that coverage would be in the bottom of the telecoms Maslow pyramid in this case, right? Without coverage, there is no possibility of service in any case, no matter whether it is satellite or if it is mobile. We don't really care about that. So, of course, the priorities from my perspective should be first getting everywhere and leaving no one behind. My concerns about what we want to achieve, and it depends a lot on how bold we want to be as Europeans, is there is a world of differences, and there is a Swiss knife. I'm just concerned that we might be using the fork to cut the steak. That's my only concern. But it is important that we are at least aware of what we are doing. That's very important, because as Julia said, it is going to be a phased deployment in any case. But we need to be conscious that if we said it is going to be universal in urban areas, we need to achieve that. If we want by 2030 to work towards a gigabit society, even if gigabit per second does not make sense as of now. But if we believe it as a strategy, as a vision, we need to work towards there. So therefore, spectrum is key. Mid-band 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz spectrum availability and its usage is very important. But considering that it will be much costlier deploying those kind of base stations, because you will need 3, 4, 5 times more than using low band, it is also essential from our perspective to reduce those costs in terms of deployment for mobile network operators, and find the proper public and private partnerships, or even the policy frameworks that enable those deployments in a more cost-effective manner, so that we can reach with high band, with high quality 5G as far as possible. Then the $1 million question is, okay, assuming that we are capable of doing so in urban areas, so what would policymakers then do while creating this artificial digital divide? So are we leaving some of those in less populated areas and rural or remote areas behind? So what the implications are? So what does the state and the European Union, or Europe in more general terms, want to get to increase where the industry can get? Okay, that's my personal two cents.
Excellent, Stephen. I see that you want to jump in, but just before you do, just wanted to raise one question or thought about the targets and what are the digital decade targets all about? And it's about the technology, which is supposed to be technologically neutral. So it's not supposed to be just fiber. It's not just supposed to be satellite or Wi-Fi, or it's also supposed to be technologically neutral. So is that missing in the whole discussion? This whole idea that the Commission maybe should just be more clear and say, look at this, this is about technological neutrality, and however we get there is fine. Perhaps the market should decide rather than policymakers. Just putting that out, Stephen.
So you're right that there's a role for technologies to be complementary. It was interesting that your comments about the speeds available in Portugal, because it's, to my mind, a very a successful market for a number of reasons. They've had a very early and competitive investment in fiber infrastructure. So the level of take-up of fiber in Portugal is way ahead of a lot of Europe. Secondly, the majority of consumers are buying bundles of fixed broadband and mobile. So they've got this idea of, if I can get a certain speed on fiber, I want a good speed on mobile. The third element is the way that the regulator, at least historically, treated spectrum licenses, not as a cash cow for Treasury, but as a way of steering investment. And we saw twice, with 2 phases of license renewals, ANACOM ask operators to make investments in extending the footprint of mobile network coverage rather than put money into treasury to finance some other national initiative. So spectrum reform is a very strong lever to unlock the finances to make investment, both in terms of coverage and reach, but also going forward in terms of quality and speed. We've seen license renewals now in Germany that are close to conclusion, in the Czech Republic, previously in France. So I think regulators are now thinking licensing is a very important lever to work out how to encourage and drive those investments across and investments up into higher speed and deeper connectivity. We still have a scale issue to challenge, but there are ways of tackling that.
Excellent. Yes, Tassos, please.
Thank you. On this topic about targets, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it. I think it's a matter of putting also the user in the center. We specify targets. Sometimes it seems to me that we are trying to strangle the operators to achieve these targets without maybe be ready for it. I'm not sure if I'm correct there, but I think we should take a balanced approach. There are things that are needed. There are things that are good to have. There are things that are more futuristic. Have we asked the user, I mean, every user, the common people on the street, the industry, the verticals, what do they need? How can we give them the service that they would like to have, they need to have in order to function and in order to be given the services that the technologies have promised. The technology neutrality principle is quite important. I wouldn't mind if every village would be connected in 4G. It's a very good technology, delivers nice speeds, delivers services, video on demand, everything, and then move forward. Of course, when 5G or 6G is more efficient, more economical, more sustainable, then we focus in the most populated areas to deliver this technology, to deploy this technology, and leave the operator again to decide what technology to employ where. There's no point, in my simplistic view, there's no point of replacing good infrastructure that delivers service just because it's nicer to see this 5G or 6G logo on our terminals. So I think it's a good opportunity that the whole ecosystem, regulators, policymakers, operators, citizens, industry, work together to actually define what is needed and how to go forward to it.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So we have let the operator decide. I'm going to open the discussion up to the floor, see if there's any questions. It looks like we do have a question. We have someone with a microphone who will deliver to you. And please, if you could identify yourself, what company or association you're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm Berger Usko from Telia Company, and I really would have liked to comment also in the previous discussion because we do operate in Nordics and Baltics and including the Finland. But for this discussion, I do have a question which I think Tassos already touched a bit, is that we kind of need to understand what the demands also are in reality, not just putting the targets. Because one challenge operators do have that how to monetize the investments we do and when to do it, when to monetize. So we basically need to invest in networks long before there is actual demand, because, well, we don't know when the demand is, and of course then we need to invest a bit ahead in time. So do you have any ideas on how to kind of accelerate the adoption of 5G services from the user perspective so that they are actually willing to pay for the services that we do provide? Thank you.
That's a great question. How do you increase demand? That's what you want to.
That's a really good question. We discuss a lot with my now 6G co-chair, Heidi Himanen, who is from Finland, actually. So we compare notes from the south to the north, and they are completely different. I mean, we fight for harmonization in Europe, harmonization in spectrum, harmonization in dates, labels, technologies, and whatnot. I'm not convinced that we are harmonized in needs. I mean, there are countries that are evenly populated in all their areas. I know very well that Finland has a large concentration in the south and really sparse areas in the north. So the needs are totally different. And to specify that everyone will have, I don't know, 100 megabits per second or a gigabit per second in every place. I don't know, it's good to have. Is it needed? And
Yeah, is it needed? It's a really good question. Stephen, I think you're interested in.
Sure.
Tell me, yeah.
I mean, we'd all love to magic up the demand. It comes when it comes. I think in Europe, we do have groups like ERT, which is an industry group. It's not a telecom group. It's a group of European industrialists, manufacturers and beverage producers and so on, who are all interested in how to make sure that Europe could become competitive. And they're each working in their own way, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing, whatever. How can we harness the latest capabilities? And it could be, could be drug treatments or DNA analysis. It could be digital connectivity. So our biggest industrial groups in Europe are looking and are keen to embrace all of these enabling technologies, including digital. It's our job to make sure that they understand the capabilities and to work with them to help them to pilot and deploy those capabilities. We are seeing positive signs of industrial players putting in automation into manufacturing or chemical production, agricultural yield improvements, energy load management and distribution, medical care, and so on. We're not seeing them at scale across every player in every industry, but it only takes a few to achieve this breakthrough for it to then, as I mentioned with the music industry, if you were a music label who was still selling compact cassettes, you would have missed the boat. Whatever the equivalent is for healthcare or for transport or defense, those are the breakthroughs that we need to support, and they will ultimately flourish. But ultimately, there is a commercial risk in timing. But that's the business of the private sector and investors to accept the risk of that timing.
Raphael, just if you can, just I want to check if there's any more questions on the floor. Okay, Raphael, if you can just respond quickly, and then we'll take one more question from the floor.
Sure, very quickly, just to complement what Stephen was saying, we have to clearly differentiate between B2C and B2B use cases and different ways of monetizing, obviously, the technology. I think it's very clear in B2B that there is a lot of potential to be exploited yet. And even in the B2C arena, I also believe that the new 5G flavors, so standalone and 5G advanced, could enable new use cases for gamers, remote workers, live streamers, etc. There are certain customer segments. Obviously, it's not the full customer base, but still, there are certain requirements that are beyond just speed levels. It's about SLAs, consistency, reliability, and guaranteeing at a certain point in time that you comply with full satisfaction the service delivery. So I really do think that there is some movement towards that direction, and indeed, Deutsche Telekom shared yesterday that they have activated that only for gamers. Okay, so I think there is a world to be explored soon in that sense. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll take one more question from the floor.
I think I've got the mic over here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Other side, over here.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Well, we'll have two questions then.
My name is Richard Haas. I'm with Policy Tracker. I'm curious, talking about targets, the UK recently sort of copied the homework, I think, of the European Commission with its 5G target, but they put the word standalone in there. So it's full standalone coverage by 2030. Why doesn't Europe just adopt that? Or I wonder what the panelists think about that.
Taking a lesson from the UK. Who wants to tackle that one? Someone, go ahead.
So standalone it's a bit like back to the Swiss Army knife. Standalone is another whole new capability around service level management and latency and speed and so on. I think it's a great objective. A bit like setting targets in healthcare, you can set whatever targets you want for waiting lists. You need to make sure that the industry is equipped to deliver those targets, whether it's standalone or so many heart operations per year. Take a step back, look at Europe. In all industries, the name of the game today is scale. Look at our drug developers, and you can name them on the fingers of one hand in Europe, but they are massive and they operate in a global market. Look at car manufacturing and how that is consolidated. Take other industries, and you will see there is a scale behind development and delivery of products and services. And the same is true in digital. We need to scale up as well as a European industry. Now, we've had the debate whether that's cross-market or in-market, but it's not a surprise that in the UK, if there are targets like this to be met, it will be through scale. And you are aware, I'm sure, of Vodafone's merger with Three in the UK. That is all about scale. And that is what will allow investment in the technologies to make standalone possible over time. So you cannot run subscale today's latest 5G and future technologies. The merger in the UK, the Competition and Markets Authority, recognized that it would take two players whose ROCE was below weighted average cost of capital and bring it above the line so that investment became positive. Plus the synergies and cost savings would unlock an additional £11 billion of capital investment into that converged network in the UK. That gives you a lot more capacity, volume, speed, but crucially, it also significantly drives down unit traffic costs. We keep talking about ARPU versus, pence per megabyte. 5G at scale will drive down unit traffic costs phenomenally and begin to unlock those sorts of services that we see, not just enabled by standalone capability, but enabled by the economics of scale delivering low unit traffic costs.
I am terribly sorry, but we've run out of time. I just ask the indulgence of our organizers. Can we take one more question, or do we need to wrap it up? One more. Okay. There we go. Very kind organizers. But please keep it quick if you can.
Hi, thanks. Andy Gans from Cisco. I think maybe it's the targets need to be thought about a bit better. I think when you see 5G everywhere, is it everywhere indoor? Is it everywhere outdoor? What's the target? It's a bit confusing for people, I think. It should be the connectivity target could be 1 gigabit everywhere, but doesn't necessarily have to be delivered by 5G. 5G is a very important component of that, but does it need to be public 5G? Could it be private 5G? Could it be Wi-Fi? Could it be satellite? And I think that's where the thought needs to be given a little bit more, because actually you're putting far too much pressure on the public operators to deliver something that there probably isn't a business case to do that at present, and the investment isn't there. Whereas if you kind of put all that together, of all the connectivity means, there will be a business case for each of them in their own right. Because there's the same for us when we do private networks. We have to have a business case there to be able to offer to our customers, to make that cost of the network bring back the benefits. And it's the same in the enterprise and industrial. And that's the kind of key, I think, in all these targets, is getting them right. Whether it's indoor targets, outdoor targets, rural targets, is making sure we do it correctly and not put too much pressure on one entity or another. Let the business case be the one that solves the problem.
I think I didn't really detect a question in that.
Well, the question is, what do people think about the way that these targets need to be defined? Should it be connectivity, or should it just be focused on certain technologies like 5G, 6G? Should it be the overall? I mean, we've seen that yesterday in the answers. Okay. What do the panel think?
I think we'll have to have the answer to that one during the coffee break or the lunch break. And because we have run over time. But I just want to thank the panel. Excellent work, everyone. And I really hope that we can continue the discussion during lunch and other breaks. So please give a hand to the panelists.